Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoes Reborn.com, with me as your host, Chris Planet Eater McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me today to talk about the news that Hasbro's Haslab Unicron has successfully funded is Pat Organ Swelles Stewart. Do you get it? So without further ado, let's get stuck into this news burst. Way back in July, Hasbro revealed their Haslab project aimed directly at the Transformers collector community with the planet-eating chaos bringer himself, Unicron. After a number of additions, including a comics bundle, minifigures and a mini arc, a significant extension to the funding period and to expand the offer globally, the project has finally come to an end and successfully funded by 282%, whatever that means, with the largest Transformers action figure going into production as we speak and a release date of early 2021, or 2021 as normal people say. We thought it would be a good time to have a chat about the significance of this insane toy and also what Hasbro will be thinking after quite an interesting funding period. Joining me to discuss these matters is the one and only Not Picard Patrick Stewart. Hi bud, thanks for jumping on with me for this one. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate being on again. This is definitely a topic that I'm super excited about. I've been excited about this for a few months, and it was like a grueling last month wondering if it's going to fund.
And it is, so I guess you're happy that the project has reached its goal and that Unicron's getting made?
Absolutely.
Did you go in on it?
I think I went in on it probably about an hour after it went live.
That's impressive. I went in on it about an hour before it finished, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, it was the first I'd heard about it. So the second I heard about it, it was like, whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, I was making sure that it was going to happen right then.
Not buying any food this month, not buying... Just going to focus on all this. Now, I mean, okay, so in terms of Unicron itself, what does this particular figure mean to you? What does this particular character mean to you?
You know what? Unicron has such a history of not getting produced that fans have, it's almost like the biggest piece in Transformers history that didn't get made is that gigantic Generation 1 Unicron. So to me, whenever I was looking across the last month wondering if this thing was going to get funded, I was almost disappointed. You know, we spend so much time being sad about the things that don't come out that we weren't able to get. Yeah. And here's our opportunity to make sure that Unicron happens. And I was worried that the fans weren't going to come together to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of trepidation towards this particular project, wasn't there? I mean, go back to July when the reveal for Unicron was made. It was a massive surprise to a lot of the fans. Immediately started the funding process on their Hasbro Pulse website as well, with a price of $574.99 and a goal of at least 8,000 backers. I mean, do you think Hasbro overestimated the need for this toy at the time, and was that price a turn-off to a lot of people, do you think?
If you had asked me a week ago, I would have said that they overestimated it, but now with hindsight being 2020 and it's like over 280% past the goal, I think that they were a little on the shy side of what this was capable of. I think that a lot of us were worried about it because if you look at the sale of Sail Barge, which really was probably a better metric than Cookie Monster for comparison's sake. I think, what was the Sail Barge? Its goal was like, was it
5,000? I want to say it might have been more than that.
And I think it hit 8.
Yeah. I think it comfortably went past 8,000 backers actually. But yeah, I think they probably used that number, didn't they, for this particular time round?
Yeah, and you know, Star Wars doesn't really compare to Transformers, and a lot of us talked about that a lot back whenever it first went up because obviously there are a lot more Star Wars collectors than there are Transformers. Well, there's a lot more Star Wars fans, I should say, than there are Transformers fans. At least that's my estimation of the world. So having Transformers have a higher goal than Star Wars did seemed a little bit backwards. But then when you think about it, for Transformers, Unicron is definitely a more important character than Jabba's Sail Barge is for Star Wars fans. Yeah. So this is going to be more of a key piece. It definitely was more of a centerpiece. Star Wars already had like the big Millennium Falcon. and a lot of other large things. So I don't think that one was as important to Star Wars fans as Unicron is to the existing Transformers fans.
That's actually a good point, actually, and I don't think we really discussed that much in previous Unicron-based bursts that we've done in the past. But that is a good point, because the barge, as beautiful and magnificent and ridiculously huge and beautifully designed as it is, you're right. I mean, if you'd asked a collector what they would like to have in terms of, you know, the biggest scale thing that you can think of to actually, you know, produce as a toy, I think the majority of people would want something more like, you know, a piece of the Death Star, or, you know, something along those lines. That's something so pivotal in not obviously there's a pivotal scene with Jabba's sail barge in the movies, but in terms of a pivotal, iconic, you know, thing in Star Wars, I don't think many people would have been clamoring for that particular thing to be made.
Right, yeah. I mean, it is a great item because there's a lot of figures that you can collect to put on it, so it makes sense for a project, but not quite as much sense, I don't think, as Unicron does for Transformers fans.
Do you think price had a lot to do with it? Because, I mean, I did see a lot of people, and I mean, you see this anyway with anything that comes out at any price. There always seems to be a discussion about it's too expensive, etc., etc. But do you think that Hasbro maybe just were pushing their luck as much as they possibly could here with this particular price point?
For sure. I think that they definitely priced some people out of it, which is unfortunate. I know that they priced a lot of people out of buying two of them.
Yeah, I wanted to repaint one in, like, what was it, Energon or one of those eras where they brought a couple of Unicrons out. I wanted to repaint one, and I thought, no, I'm not spending over $1,000 just to have one to ruin, you know?
Yeah, and you know, that topic's come up with some Transformers groups and people that I've spoken with is, well, you know, can they repaint it? Because that's often, you know, the way that tooling costs are offset is by doing a repaint. I don't know how many, like, bright, clear green Unicrons they could sell for $600 or $750, or what a hyper exclusive would be of this. So I think that this was just kind of a one shot. This is the only chance everybody had at anything for Unicron.
I can't wait to see some crazy customizers do some jobs on this, though, because I think we will see some people. You know, some people may have bought a couple or more than two.
I hope.
Yeah, at least I'll live vicariously through them anyway. Another interesting aspect of the funding period was that decision to expand not only the actual period itself, but also the larger global market that had been neglected initially. How important was that for Hasbro to address these issues in order to get the project funded?
I think that was the key to making it happen, to be honest. And Transformers has always been a very global brand. So the first thing that I remember hearing was Australia had been added, that there were some orders coming in through Australia.
Yeah.
And I saw that, you know, that Takara was taking their orders. And part of that made me think, well, if Takara's taking orders and it doesn't seem to be hinged upon whether or not Hasbro makes it happen, it seems like it's a pretty done deal. But then, you know, last month started getting toward the end of the month and things weren't looking really good.
No.
And I started wondering if those orders had been applied yet. And I don't, in hindsight, I don't think that they had.
No.
I think that probably is something that got added to this gigantic number that we're seeing now.
Yeah, because it did jump quite dramatically, and I think a lot of people thought that was the addition of the overseas numbers and stuff. But I think a lot of them hadn't been calculated into that particular funding thing. I mean, it did feel like Hasbro were throwing a lot of things at this project to get it funded. There felt like there was not like a desperation of some sorts, because we'd had the Cookie Monster fail, and I think that might. I mean, how do you feel about the Cookie Monster and, you know, Unicron, two Haslab projects literally announced on the same day? I know they don't share the same fan base, but do you think that maybe takes some of the edge off what you kind of look at the Haslab project as this special thing, especially with the barge? Do you think that took some of the shine off it? And in that case, obviously, maybe people weren't, or that had an effect on people jumping in and backing this?
Well, I think that Cookie Monster had actually, I think that he'd gone up first by just a little bit.
It was like a few hours, wasn't it? Yeah.
I remember people seeing Cookie Monster and being like almost disappointed, as if we were, entitled for them to
Yeah.
make a Haslab project that was something that would be geared toward whatever fan base you may want. I think that even Star Wars collectors assumed that the next Haslab
It's
thing
going to
would
be another Star. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think in a lot of ways, I think that it's good. I think that what it shows is that some of these projects can overlap. I definitely wouldn't want, the My Little Pony collectors or the Nerf people to have to wait on, Transformers or G.I. Joe to finish its funding period
Sure.
to have whatever idea of theirs get started and off the ground. So I think that them overlapping is fine, but I do think that Cookie Monster not funding definitely put a scare into everybody.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think that had more effect, I think, than than having two at the same time. Do you think revealing the actual project immediately asking for the funding, it's like that was the reveal. It was like straight up on Hasbro Pulse, and therefore it's like you can get funding immediately now. Do you think maybe, and I know you get given time, a pretty decent time period in that funding process, but like psychologically, I feel like it has an effect on people if it's just dropped in your lap and it's like boom, it's there. And also maybe if you're given a bit of an intro to it beforehand, like, oh, look at what we're working on for the next Haslab project, and then this will go into funding on this date. Do you think that would have a more psychological effect for people to then maybe get more prepared for something like this?
I think that really the only preparation that we would have needed is financial preparation.
Yeah.
If we'd had some kind of hint, hey, something big is coming, and maybe you want to prepare your wallet for it somehow.
Yeah.
But as far as waiting, like showing what it was and then waiting until later, I've seen some people suggest that maybe that would be good, but at the same time, I'm sure that what would happen is, people would see the initial pictures of it, get excited, and then say, oh, I'm going to buy 10. And then, a month later, when our funding goes up, you've really given it some thought and maybe you decide not to. So I think that in a lot of ways, they have to make the thing available while the excitement is there.
That's a very good point, actually, Pat. Yeah, I suppose I was looking at it in certain ways as to, how do you get that? How do you pick the pace up, really, for the backers? Because when this was going through its process, I was very concerned that it wouldn't fund and how bad that would look, and especially after Cookie Monster failing, and then it's like, here's an extension and here's a bunch of other things we're going to throw at it, like a comics bundle and a piece of art that comes with it, and a like the little minifigures that they kept adding, and the little arc, and then the increased articulation in the hands and the chin, the extra chin beard they were going to add. So I felt like there was a lot of things being thrown at it, almost not in a kind of desperate way to just we've got to get this through, and that's how it felt to me. Do you know?
Yeah, it absolutely felt that way to me too. I kind of have to wonder, though, if the extension wasn't more because of the business side of coordinating things. I can only imagine, they were taking orders in the United States through Hasbro Pulse, but then through so many other channels that coordinating all of those numbers, I think may have been, and then verifying that those numbers were right. I have to wonder, what were they doing in order to make sure that the international numbers coming in were the right numbers?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I wonder, and the fact that they didn't launch with those right away.
Yeah.
Makes me think that maybe they were scrambling to figure things out as far as that part of it goes. It definitely did feel a little desperate, the fact that they kept on adding things. But I think part of that may have been built in right from the beginning, because like I'm thinking, if you put everything out there right at the start, there's not a reason for all the news to keep popping up and reminding people of Unicron, for those people that didn't back it the second that it dropped.
True.
You don't want a situation where it's only mentioned the day that it's revealed and the day that it's going to end.
Yeah. You need that constant content in order to keep the interest up, and then you're right, and then for people to be like, oh, there's another thing that comes with it, and you're right. A lot of that probably would have been included at the beginning. I think there were a few aspects that they maybe threw in almost as an extra, that they were just trying to think of things to maybe do, but I could definitely see the small figures and the maybe the kind of development in some of the physical aspects of the toy were probably already factored in as things that they were going to reveal. Because, yeah, like you say, when you're getting it right at the start, there's still a lot of development to go through. We probably saw it at a good stage along, actually, in development in terms of structure and build and how the figure works and transforms, because we were seeing videos of people transforming it, and we were seeing videos of this thing as almost like a finished piece, weren't we?
Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing of showing us most of it and then adding bits and pieces and other things to entice us does make me wonder, was there anything that we weren't shown?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. That will come out a few years from now, definitely.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the HasLab model itself, where do Hasbro go from here? I mean, what sorts of lessons do you think have been learned here from them?
Well, for sure, international. I think that has to be the biggest lesson. And the next time something HasLab pops up, we'll probably all be wondering if there's some big international order payoff waiting to happen right at the end to save us.
Yeah, if unfortunately if it's already open and then you get to the end and they're still not there, you'll be like, right, we're screwed now. We're out of luck. We opened it to the world and they don't want it.
Yeah, and I think there's a danger there of people expecting that at the end next time.
Yeah.
So I kind of wonder what the next project is going to be, how the pacing will be, and I think that they may have learned also about doing reveals. Maybe I just didn't follow Cookie Monster again that much, but how many times did they do an update of additional parts that were coming with Cookie Monster?
Yeah, hardly any. In fact, it felt like almost like we're going to put this out. It's already kind of, this is what you're going to get, and then that was it. I mean, I got a few emails along the way, but it was really very basic, and we wasn't to say you're getting any extras with it. So yeah, it felt as though like the Cookie Monster one was really just thrown out there and left. Like it wasn't necessarily a really strong focus of theirs to get done.
Yeah, so I think that we can probably expect in the future, for whatever the project may be, that we won't see all of it right away. I think that they do know that they need all the news, the fan news popping up with this stuff every once in a while and reminding people what it's about and further enticing people. So I think that those little bits may get even better next time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, could you see, I'm obviously I have to ask this, but do you see G.I. Joe getting anything in the future via HasLab? And if so, what do you think would be a logical or practical or even appropriate thing to actually do for the G.I. Joe brand?
We're not going to be able to talk about this without talking about the USS Flag.
Never heard of it, mate.
I do kind of feel like if you want a USS Flag, that the price of one on the secondary market is close to what Hasbro would have to charge you for one now. So you may as well just go on eBay and buy one if you really want one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, making one new probably wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah.
With new technology, they probably could design something into there. But I also think to myself, I kind of already have a USS Flag, or at least everybody could get one for roughly the price they would be paying.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have something else.
Yeah. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you in the Joe kind of in like the Joe world that might be, something that could be done? And like, we've seen the sail barge from Star Wars, which was, I'm not gonna. It is an iconic vehicle, so that's an iconic vehicle from the film. Unicron is obviously a hugely iconic character from the movie. Are we looking at something with Joe, if it's ever done, to be something that follows in that kind of vintage, what we've had in media? So like maybe from the film, maybe something along the lines of a playset like a HQ, maybe from the comics, like the Pit, something along those lines. I mean, could any of this, do you think, does any of that stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say the Pit, maybe a Cobra Castle would make a lot of sense.
Nice.
But I don't, like we were talking about before, I don't know if there's anything from G.I. Joe that is quite as important as Unicron is that would cause, everybody, all the G.I. Joe fans and other people to take notice. And I think that that's an important part of it.
Yeah.
The Pit it could be amazing. And USS Flag, again, I think it was always more of a marketing push than it was an attempt to make money.
Yes.
And maybe that could work again. I think that it all depends on what we see from G.I. Joe in the future, because we could be talking, and I hate to totally derail the topic by bringing this up, we could be talking 6-inch G.I. Joes in the future.
Good point, yeah.
if we don't have 3 3/4 inch figures to put on a USS flag or in a pit that are new, are they going to be making a vehicle or playset that are compatible with them? Probably not.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
I could also see, I mean, would a 6-inch HISS tank be something that retail would want?
Good point.
Maybe
Again,
not.
yeah.
But for a HasLab project, I could see a 6-inch scale HISS tank funding very quickly.
Yeah, and I suppose like price comes into that as well, doesn't it? Because I mean, the Joe fans are quite famous almost for, knowing very well their limits in terms of the money thing, and will step back, and make it known if it is too expensive. But something I think along the lines of a HISS tank, like you're saying, like a 6-inch scale HISS tank, I think would be well within the everyone's remit, and within everyone's kind of financial situation who are Joe fans. But could you see, I mean, in terms of backers, we're probably not going to be looking at 8,000, are we?
I don't think so. No, I think that the Joe fans are well under that number as far as people who show up regularly buying things. It's a little odd because I think that Hasbro has seen a lot more loyalty from G.I. Joe just historically. I remember hearing from the club at some point that the G.I. Joe fans tended to stay on as members.
Yeah.
Whereas Transformers, it depended a little bit more on what the figure was for the year, whether or not they resubscribed the following year.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and then you also look at what was going on with the Marvel Comics back in the 90s. And G.I. Joe, I think, as far as subscribers, not total sales, but for subscribers, for quite a while there, it was number one.
Yeah.
So I think that G.I. Joe fans are the most loyal fans there are. So if anybody's going to back anything, it's going to be us, just unfortunately in lower numbers.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, thanks for jumping on and chatting about Unicron and HasLab and stuff, Pat. Really appreciate it, bud.
I appreciate being on. It's been great.
Awesome. So obviously Unicron is now officially funded. It actually reached the back of funding a number of days ago, but obviously, late last night. And this was quite interesting, actually, Pat. As I was checking the kind of countdown for it to be finished, it reached a certain number past 8,000 and then didn't tell you how many past 8,000 it actually had. It had this morning at like 8,000 plus, and it changed the day of which it was going to be which the deadline was going to be twice. So last night it actually stated it was like an hour left, and I was like, okay, cool. And then as that hour elapsed, I went back and refreshed it, and it said 1 day and so on and so forth left. So it added like another, even though it was supposed to be today that it was officially ending, it finished last night at some stage, and it seemed to be all over the place. Did you notice that, by the way?
I thought it was supposed. Whenever I was watching it before, I thought it was supposed to be last night that it ended.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It seemed to change on my end twice, and even the date that it showed in that little box went from like 10/6, 10/7. It just kept going back and forth, and I was like, that's so weird.
After it funded and I felt like I could rest at ease, I figured that I would go back and look at it after it was all over. So I looked at it at some point last night after it had ended and saw that the site said 8,000 plus. And I thought, well, that's, I wanted to know how many people backed it.
I know, so did I. It was really annoying, that.
Elsewhere on the site, it did show like 251 or 252% as well. So I thought, well, that's weird. So they almost don't want you to know how big it went, but then they're telling you on the other part of the web.
Technically, they are telling you. Yeah, they're telling you. But if you've got to be all about maths to understand that, and I'm not.
Well, yeah, there's like 22,000 of these things being made. That's a lot. That's way over goal.
That's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Well, in any case, dude, thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate it. Unicron will be coming into your houses, those that backed it. And probably taking over the majority of the space in those houses as well, because it's absolutely huge. Anyway, thank you, Pat. Much appreciated, buddy. Thanks for jumping on.
Yep, thank you.
That's it for this instalment of the Full Force News Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Patrick Stewart. See you next time, and as always, proceed on your way to oblivion. I don't have the voice for Unicron, unfortunately. It's close enough.
And would have if we had the Generation 1 Unicron, because I was just reading how it was supposed to come with a microphone like USS to talk through it and sound like Unicron.
Could you imagine how cool that would have been? I have seen the it was only like the prototype of it. That's popped up a few times, hasn't it?
2 different colors, I think, actually popped up.
Man,
I've seen one, and then one that looks like you did in the movie.
Awesome. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.